Under the scorching sun of Valencia's dusty streets, Juan Carlos Ferrero was once mocked as a madman with an impossible dream, a skinny frame, empty pockets, and a heart full of ambitions that everyone around him called delusional. He was the living image of someone abandoned by fate. Nobody believed that boy could ever reach the top of professional tennis, let alone stand on a Grand Slam podium. But fate has a way of humiliating the skeptics. From the ashes of ridicule, Ferrero rose and shattered every limit placed before him. He conquered Roland Garros, dominated the world #1 ranking, and transformed the mocking laughter of his early years into stunned admiration. And he did not stop there. He built a multi-million-dollar tennis academy empire where the dreams of the next generation are given wings, fueled by the very belief he so desperately needed during his darkest days. Born on February 12, 1980, in the small town of Ontinyent in the province of Valencia, Spain, Juan Carlos Ferrero entered the world in an ordinary family that never imagined their child would one day become the pride of a nation. His father, Eduardo, was a hard-working builder who carried the weight of supporting his wife and children with quiet dignity. His mother, Rosario, was a warm and loving woman, arguably the greatest source of encouragement throughout Juan Carlos's entire childhood. In their modest home, the boy and his two older sisters grew up surrounded by strict but deeply caring parents. Ontinyent in the 1980s was never considered a hotbed for tennis, much less a birthplace for world champions. But destiny planted a strange seed of passion in Ferrero's heart when he was just 7 years old. His father built a basic tennis court in their backyard, using painted lines and homemade wooden stakes for a net. It was in that primitive setting that Ferrero's first shots rang out, signaling the start of an extraordinary journey. People still remember how young Juan Carlos was skinny, agile, and almost never stood still. Friends affectionately gave him the nickname El Mosquito, the little mosquito, always darting across the court, burning through every open space with persistence and an unbreakable spirit. In his earliest training sessions, Ferrero often swung an old wooden racket his father had picked up from a local tennis club. Each shot was a bit clumsy, but in the boy's eyes burned an unquenchable desire. By age 9 or 10, he also loved soccer and cycling, but his heart ultimately belonged to tennis, the sport that bonded with his father during long hours on a hot concrete court. Eduardo quickly realized his son had not only talent, but an extraordinary will. In the afternoons, he would always remind Juan Carlos, "You can lose, but never give up." At age 11, with his family's full support, Ferrero was sent to the Equalite Academy in Valencia to train systematically under coach Antonio Martinez Cascales, a man who became almost a second father and accompanied Ferrero throughout the entirety of his career. That was the turning point that completely altered the skinny boy's life. Still, his childhood years were not without tears. Juan Carlos once broke down crying after losing a regional tournament at just 10 years old, convinced his tennis dream was finished. But his father taught him a lesson he would never forget, one he would later pass on to his own students. You can cry today, but train so hard that you never have to cry like that again. In 1998, at 18 years old, Ferrero officially entered the demanding world of the ATP Tour. His unusual playing style was immediately apparent. A lean but explosive physique, an iron will, and a thunderous forehand on clay. A year later, in 1999, he caused a sensation by reaching the quarterfinals of Roland Garros at just 19 years old. That was the first roar of a king of clay. The period from 2000 to 2003 marked his most brilliant peak. Ferrero and the Spanish team triumphed in the 2000 Davis Cup, a title that ushered in a golden era for Spanish tennis. He reached the Roland Garros final in 2002, suffering a bitter defeat, only to return the following year and conquer the legendary Paris tournament in 2003, officially ascending to the world #1 ranking that September. El Mosquito had become a true warrior. But tennis has never been a stage for long-lasting fairy tales. Immediately after his 2003 peak, Ferrero entered a dark period. He contracted chickenpox in 2004, a seemingly minor illness that severely drained his stamina and caused a serious collapse in form. Then wrist and heel injuries constantly plagued him, eroding his will to compete. Ferrero plummeted out of the top 10 so quickly he could barely believe it. Some called him a dethroned king. Meanwhile, Rafael Nadal emerged like a storm, sweeping away every clay court record in sight. But Ferrero did not disappear. He persevered. He fought. He held on to hope. In 2010, after nearly 7 years of decline, Ferrero won an ATP title in Casablanca, a powerful reminder that a champion's heart never truly dies. And finally, in 2012, after more than a decade of sweat, blood, and sacrifice, Ferrero announced his retirement. He closed his career with 16 ATP titles, one Roland Garros Grand Slam, for Masters 1,000 titles, 8 weeks at the top of the world, and countless grueling battles that left permanent marks on his memory. Juan Carlos Ferrero's story did not end in the shadows. He became a coach, then took on an even greater role, mentoring the next generation. Starting in 2015, Ferrero began working with Alexander Zverev, and then later focused entirely on a raw young talent named Carlos Alcaraz. Ferrero poured his iron will, tenacity, and the most beautiful tennis philosophy he carried into Alcaraz, helping the young player conquer the U.S. Open in 2022, Wimbledon in 2023, Roland Garros in 2024, and maintain the world #1 ranking. As a Ferrero were reliving his own youth through his student, the J.C. Ferrero Equalite Sport Academy, which once welcomed a timid 11-year-old boy, has since grown into a massive training empire, hosting hundreds of young players from around the world. The facility sits on more than 120,000 square meters and operates as a self-contained world. Ferrero's private villa is located right within the academy grounds, built in a traditional Mediterranean architectural style with white walls, terracotta roofs, and natural wood interiors. The villa features panoramic views of ATP standard tennis courts, a saltwater swimming pool, a private spa, a personal reading room, and a basement housing career memorabilia, including the old wooden racket his father gave him when he was just 7 years old. Over $13 million in ATP prize money, combined with major endorsement deals with Nike, Head, and Mercedes-Benz Spain, places net worth somewhere between $15 and $20 million, a figure he has never publicly disclosed, but one estimated by European media experts. Unlike many athletes who favor flashy supercars, Ferrero expresses his passion for speed in a discreet and distinctive way. He is known to love two very different cars: the Renault Spider, a super-light vintage convertible designed for true racing purists, and the Nissan GTR, nicknamed Godzilla, capable of going from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 3 seconds. One nostalgic, one groundbreaking. Together they perfectly reflect the dual nature of the man. Ferrero today lives in Valencia with his wife Eva Alonso and their young daughter. He met Eva in 2004, when he was still at his peak, and the two have walked through every storm together, declining form, injuries, and the pressures of fame. In 2014, they welcomed their first daughter. In 2015, they married in a private ceremony in Valencia, attended only by close friends and family. No spotlights, no spectacle, just the people who mattered most. After retiring, Ferrero has dedicated almost all of his time to the Equalite Academy. His small family lives within the grounds. His daughter attends an international school nearby, while Eva quietly supports the management work. In the eyes of those who know him, Ferrero is not one to publicly display grand romantic gestures, but it is his simple actions, taking his daughter to school every morning, sitting down with his family for dinner after coaching, personally inspecting the practice courts in his free time, that reveal a man who found his greatest victory not in a trophy, but in a life built on love and purpose. Ferrero's legacy is not defined by titles or ATP rankings alone. It lives in every young player training diligently in Valencia. It lives in Carlos Alcaraz's confident stride on the biggest stages in the world. And it lives in the unwavering belief that Ferrero has always carried, and now freely give to others, that every child, regardless of background or circumstance, deserves the chance to reach for their dream if they have the desire to fight for it. At 45 years old, Juan Carlos Ferrero is still moving forward. He no longer hunts for titles. He hunts for something greater. The unfinished dreams of the next generation. The skinny kid with the old wooden racket from Montinian proved that even the longest roads, paved with doubt and defeat, can lead to something truly eternal. Not just a champion, a legend, a man who was born to challenge destiny, and did exactly that.